What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Draft Hub. Today, we are going to be taking a look at my 2026-27 Sun Belt Conference predictions. And we are rolling right along with the series. I apologize in advance today, ladies and gentlemen, if my voice sounds a little bit weak. It is the day after 4th of July recording this. So, long night last night. So just bear with me, please, if my voice does sound a little weak or scratchy, whatever it may be. But I'm excited about this one. There's a new addition to the Sun Belt Conference this year. You see the helmet in the bottom right corner. Louisiana Tech, Texas State, who is a part of the Sun Belt for the last few years, has moved on to the new Pac-12. So this is interesting. And I do, the Sun Belt Conference holds a special place in my heart because they are still the only division left in the FBS that the only conference left in the FBS that does division. So an East division and a West division. So I love that. And I think it provides opportunities for other teams to be able to make the conference championship game as well. So I do love that specifically, but this might have a few surprises in it. So before we get into it, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys enjoy videos like this, if you enjoy college football content, transfer portal news, NFL content, NFL predictions, NFL draft content, of course, this is your main hub for all that kind of stuff. So please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the 2027 NFL draft. And with your guys' help today, that can certainly be possible. Now, without further delay, let's get into it. We're going to take a look at the East Division first. And for the East Division, in the basement at number 7, I have the Georgia State Panthers. So similar to last year, 1-11. Last year, I was actually, if you guys remember from last year's record predictions, I was quite high on the Georgia State Panthers. I thought that they were going to be a team that was going to be able to maybe win 6 games. They had like the 3rd or 4th best transfer in class in the FBS last year. And it just never really materialized for Del McGee last year. They did have, of course, Ted Hurst, who went over 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns. He has now been moved on to the NFL, got drafted in the 3rd round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So replacing Ted Hurst is huge. That's, your number one producer on the offensive side. Cameron Brown did show flashes last year when he was able to start. He threw for almost 1,300 yards and 13 passing touchdowns, but a 4-20 record so far for Del McGee. You have to think that he is on the hot seat. If something doesn't change this year, he is going to be out as the Georgia State Panthers head coach. But, Grant Hollier is a decent player that I think could get some decent reps for them this year at the tight end position, maybe push for all conference honors. But, a team that was 12th in the Sun Belt last year in running the football, coupled with a team that allowed 37.8 points per game. I mean, this is a team that talent-wise is far away from the rest of the conference itself. And, just things aren't really looking up anytime soon. So I think the Georgia State Panthers are going to be a team that's going to be in the basement of the Sun Belt for years to come, honestly. And I think this year's going to be no different. I believe the only win that I have is they're playing a very, very low FCS school, maybe like Stonehill College or something like that. That's going to be the only win that I see on their record, on their schedule this year. And I think it's going to be another rough year for the Georgia State Panthers. Moving on to number 6, maybe a surprise in this division. I have the Georgia Southern Eagles here. Last year, they went 7-6. I believe they finished 2nd in the division, in the East Division at 7-6. I had them at 4-8 this year for Clay Helton's squad. It's difficult. So really the reason being is a ton of defensive players are gone from this year. They also ranked 136 nationally in defensive success rate last year, gave up over 30 points per game. And, that's just, it's not going to do it. They have a difficult schedule this year as well. I went through the schedule for Georgia Southern like 4 or 5 times, and I just couldn't really squeeze out that many wins for them. I do think that Max Johnson coming in, LSU, Texas A&M, North Carolina transfer, Max Johnson, I think that provides a little bit of stability at the quarterback position. It also provides, a former 4-star recruit, brings in a very talented level player to kind of, balance out that quarterback position that's been pretty topsy-turvy the last few years. I believe it was Jace JC French was the quarterback the last couple of years for Georgia Southern. I could be wrong about that, but I do think that is who it was. But yeah, this is just it's a difficult team on the defensive side. The offensive side, I think, will be okay. Mike Mutz is a brand new coordinator for the defensive side, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. Josh Dallas returning from injury on the offensive side will certainly help. MJ Stroud, Brandon Tyson, and Chance Gamble are going to lead this defense. Chance Gamble, one of us, a white corner. That's actually pretty good. That's solid as well. But I do think this Georgia Southern team is really going to struggle kind of on both sides of the ball. I don't really think they have the explosiveness on the offensive side that they've had in years past. And then the defensive side just really lacks talent. Outside of those three names that I mentioned, it really does lack talent and depth. And this is a very difficult schedule for them this year. So I think it's going to be a rough year for the Georgia Southern Eagles. Moving on to fifth place in the East Division, I have the Appalachian State Mountaineers with a record of 5-7. Last year they went 5-8 in Dowell Loggins' first season as the head coach. Jaquari Lewis should be the focal point of this team this upcoming season. 5.2 yards per play in the Sun Belt is the top priority for Dowell Loggins this season. That's just simply not good enough. It's respectable, but against the Sun Belt where, you don't really have the greatest defenses going up against, I think you need to see that yards per play go up big time. But like I said, Jaquari Lewis should be the focal point of the offense, 618 ground yards last year. Transfers at the receiver position, Chris Lofton, Desmond James, I think are going to play big roles here as well. The offensive line is actually, one of the better ones in the division, I would say as well. 3 new transfer starters in as well. But on the defensive side, they need to get better. Allowed 6.1 yards per snap last year in the Sun Belt Conference games. And that's just not simply good enough for the Appalachian State Mountaineers. I do think that the schedule is rather fair to them. That's why I think I have them winning 5 games. But I think the struggles offensively and the struggles defensively, I really do think are going to take a toll this year. I do think it will be a little bit improved, like a little bit more stability. But at the end of the day, I do think this Appalachian State team is kind of sort of still in the middle. I could see them maybe winning 6, maybe 7 games, but I think 5-7 is like a perfect middle ground for this team. They just they're void of talent in a lot of really important areas for me. In fourth place, I have the Marshall Thundering Herd in this one. So this was a difficult takeover for Tony Gibson last year. It really was. This was a Marshall Thundering Herd team that once Charles Huff left town, 63 transfers out was clearly the most in the FBS. He was left with kind of a bare bones roster. I will be the first one to admit that last year I thought the Marshall Thundering Herd might have won 1, maybe 2 games. They finished 5-7. Tony Gibson really did a fantastic job with this team overall. Carlos Del Rio Wilson is going to be a quarterback that I think is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the conference this upcoming season. The offense averaged 6.1 yards per play. Wow, can you imagine? Only 6.1 yards per game. 6.1 yards per play in Sun Belt games. That's absolutely fantastic. And the defense was a little leaky last year, 32.8 points per game and 6 yards per play. But it should be a little bit better here with transfers coming in the secondary, transfers coming in at the linebacker position. I think defensive improvements need to be made in Tony Gibson's second year if there needs to be an improvement. But I do think things are certainly looking up. I think the offense is going to be plenty fine under Tony Gibson and Carlos Del Rio Wilson. But like I said, the defense just needs to play a little bit more disciplined and just a little bit better than they did last year. And I think this Thundering Herd team will be in bowl game contention when it's all said and done. Moving on to number 3 in the division here, I have the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. So, maybe high praise for the Chanticleers, maybe. It's a little bit of a transitional period for them. So Ryan Beard comes in, little bit of an interesting hire for the Chanticleers. So not an interesting hire for the Chanticleers saying it was a bad hire. Maybe I'm saying for Ryan Beard, who comes over from the FCS up to the FBS and leads Missouri State to a 7-6 record, you would think that maybe maybe not a lateral movement from a Conference USA team to a Sun Belt team was the move. I love this logo, by the way. This is one of my favorite logos in the FBS, but a little bit of a lateral move by Ryan Beard. But this is an interesting this is an interesting team because Beard does come with explosive offense pedigrees. But at the same time, there are 50 new transfers in for this Coastal Carolina Chanticleers team. So that's where I have my X factor as for this team to succeed like they did last year, you're going to need immediate transfer impact. So I only have them at 6-6 because I do think there's going to be a transitional period where so many new starters on the offensive side, on the defensive side. I expect Robbie Washington to take a big step forward this year for this Coastal Carolina team and kind of be the leader on the offensive side. I think that it's going to be difficult at first for this team to get this nucleus to gel together. But once they gel together, I think they're going to be pretty fine. The conference schedule towards the end of the year gets a little bit soft for the Chanticleer, so I think they'll be able to build their way up to bowl eligibility with the remaining games. I think that their last like 2 games are against South Alabama and Georgia State or something like that in the division. So I do think this team has some pretty decent players to build on the defensive side. Trey Brown, Savon McDowell, Jamarion Wayne, Miles Wood. These are some really good players for them to build up on the defensive side, and you just let Ryan Beard worry about the offense, and he'll be just fine. So I do think there'll be a little bit of a transitional period at the beginning, but I think this team will be just fine at the end of the day. Moving over at number 2, maybe a shock. I have the James Madison Dukes at number 2 in the East Division. So you know what that means right away. They miss the conference championship game. So I really do think the top of the East Division is wide open this year. James Madison, in my opinion, has one of the weaker rosters that they've had since they made the transition from the FCS to the FBS. Now, that's not saying that they have a weak roster. That's not what I'm saying at all. They have a strong roster. It's just in JMU's sense, it's not as strong. So Billy Napier makes his return to the Sun Belt. He is Mr. Sun Belt, won Sun Belt Coach of the Year 2 times before going over to Florida. He's officially back. So that experience will take this James Madison team, obviously, very far. Bob Chesney leaving for the UCLA job. He was a fantastic head coach for JMU. I think Billy Napier is going to be fantastic as well. So last year, George Pettaway was fantastic for them. They had Alonzo Barnett III as well. The quarterback position is a little weird this year for them. That's really where I think it's going to be. So it's going to be a quarterback battle between Arrington Maiden, J.C. Evans, and Cam Coleman. So there's no clear-cut favorite. There's no clear-cut starter. It might be a little bit of a transitional period for this offense. Like I said, they're going to definitely rely heavy on George Pettaway. There's a couple of good wide receivers as well. This offense is well-rounded. It's just the quarterback position that I really think is going to be, a little worrisome for the most part. But like I said, Billy Napier knows how to coach in the Sun Belt. He went 40-12 at Louisiana in a 3-year span before he moved on to Florida. That obviously didn't work out, but it's a great hire by James Madison. And I do think that after this year, after a little bit of a transitional period, they went 12-2 last year. They've been dominant in the Sun Belt since they made the move to the from the FCS to the FBS. But I do think this is, like I said, it's a wide open division. I think there's a couple of good teams in this division that could really challenge JMU. And that's where it leads me to number 1 overall in the conference. I have the Old Dominion Monarchs at number 1 in the East Division here. I have them at a 10-2 record. Ricky Rain has done a fantastic job for Old Dominion. Devin Roche, I think he's going to be fantastic. Koa Natale. Jesus, Natale. Well, I made him Italian. Koa Nautala is coming back from injury. I think that's a huge boost for the middle of this defensive unit. This is an Old Dominion team that usually boasts a pretty strong linebacking core. They only allowed 18.5 points per game last year across the entire season. The defense is returning 5 starters as well, so that's something that I think is going to be huge. DeAndre Lynch and Chris Forbes head the rush defense as well. And like I mentioned, Koa, he's coming back after missing all of 2025 due to injury. Zion Frink at the cornerback position as well will lead this secondary. I do think that it's going to be a little bit of a transitional period for the offense because, the new starting quarterback of this team has only taken 40 Quinn Hennikel, sophomore quarterback Quinn Hennikel flashed potential last year in the bowl game as well, but he only has 40 passing attempts to his name going into the season. So, like I said, flash potential in 40 snaps and 40 passing attempts. But how good is that going to be over the course of a whole season? I do think this team is going to be defensive dominant. I think they're going to be very heavy on the run game as well, but they're not going to be like the prettiest team to watch. But I think Old Dominion have what it takes to usurp James Madison at the top of the East Division this season for the Sun Belt. Moving over to the West Division now in seventh place, I have the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. So this is a team that have won 10 games in the last 3 years. They have never made it to a bowl game. No, that's not true. I'm sorry. They never won a bowl game. They haven't made it to a bowl game since 2018. And I think the misery continues for the Warhawks. One of the best names, one of the best, I can't think of the word, jerseys, clearly out of it today, boys. One of the best jerseys in all of the FBS as well. But Brian Vincent done a pretty admirable job last year in terms of working on the defense. This defense actually only gave up 5.4 yards per play and finished 19th nationally in success rate. Unfortunately, keeping that level of performance this year is going to be difficult. The Warhawks are only bringing back 2 starters, and they have major holes to fill on the defensive line and in the secondary as well. So I think the one good thing that Louisiana Monroe had going for them was their ability on defense, but it's going to be significantly more difficult this year. This is an offense that only averages 16.6 yards per play. Donald Chaney coming in as one of the Sun Belt's newcomers should certainly change that. He is one of the more exciting FCS transfers that I'm excited to watch. So I think he will get a ton of work for Louisiana Monroe. He will certainly help that 16.6 yards a game. But Aiden Armenta and a revamped wide receiving core just I don't think is going to do the job for the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks this upcoming season, honestly. And I think it's another year of basement dwelling for them in the West Division. Moving on to number 6, you have the South Alabama Jaguars as well. 4-8 they were last year. I think they go 3-9 this year. I really don't think that they have the greatest squad out there. 4-8 last year. Bishop Davenport was the star of this team. I think he will continue to lead them to be their star. 21 total touchdowns last year. This is also a team that has lost Kentrell Bullock. They lost Devin Boyson. They lost Jeremy Scott. This is, the cupboard is almost empty in terms of the offensive skill position players for the South Alabama Jaguars. They really have to build up their offense yet again. On the defensive side, allowed over 30 points per game in Sun Belt competitions as well last year. They really struggled to stop the run. They didn't really do a ton to add to that in the transfer portal. I think that this team offensively is going to be just fine, even after losing all those players. I think Bishop Davenport has the chance to be one of the better signal callers in the conference itself. But overall, I think this defense is just too leaky and just too void of talent for them to really build on anything. It's a pretty difficult schedule for South Alabama this year as well. And I don't really think they have the means to do better than 3-8, maybe 4-8. 3-9, excuse me, maybe 4-8. Again, maybe 5-7 if things go absolutely swimmingly. But I do think the South Alabama team just kind of lacks a lot of talent in really, really important areas. In 5th, I have the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Last year, they went 7-6. I have them at 4-8 this year. So Charles Huff came in and he did a great job coming in. They had talent all over the place on the offensive side, on the defensive side as well. They almost came in and beat Mississippi State in week 1. An SEC team, a Sun Belt team beating an SEC team would have been quite the headline in week 1. But Charles Huff leaves yet again. He is going to Memphis. So Blake Anderson, the offensive coordinator, will take over for Southern Miss this year. And this is a team, Blake Anderson is no stranger to life in the Sun Belt. Coached for 7 seasons with Arkansas State, was 51-37, more than respectable over there. So he takes over again. The experience will be great for the Southern Miss Golden Eagles as well. But a ton of transfers in. See, this is really the problem for me. I can't really gauge just how talented this team is. Robert Briggs should come in and, be a fantastic player. He's coming in for second? No, there's only one returning starter from the offense, and that's Broderick Roman. That will be the starting center. And Robert Briggs comes in as a transfer, and I do think he will get the majority of the work. So I'm excited to see that. But, there's just a lot going on. Landry Liddy, John White, and Ethan Hampton are going to be vying for the starting spot at the quarterback position. And I don't know if you guys know this about me by now, but I'm not in love with, a quarterback battle that involves three, four different players. To me, it just seems very messy. It seems like there's no true answer at the quarterback position. So I do think, coupled with a little bit of a difficult schedule for the Golden Eagles this year, I think it will be another transitional period for them as they go from Charles Huff to Blake Anderson. But I do think that the seeds are there for them to build a decent enough roster. I just think with all these transfers in, they're all promising, but we need to see them actually perform. So I do think that maybe a year in a transitional period will be good for the Golden Eagles, and they will be back to being close to bowl eligibility maybe next year. At 4, I have the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. So last year they went 6-7. Yes, I am doing it. And this year I do think I have them going 7-5. So a really interesting team here. A streak of consecutive bowl appearances almost ended last year with them sitting at 2-6 in November, and they were a little bit of a disappointing team. I think I had the Louisiana Raging Cajuns at like my second highest rated team in the Western Division last year for my Sun Belt Conference predictions. And they were a little disappointed. They did finish 6-6. They made a bowl game. They did lose. But I do think this team is ready to take that next step towards being a little bit more of a challenger in the conference yet again. Lunch Winfield, really, really promising season last year. 20 total touchdowns. He's going to be the guy for them going forward. He really provided the spark. When they were 2-6, Lunch Winfield came in and he was the spark on the offensive side of the ball. Sheldon Sampson Jr., an LSU transfer, a rising star for this Louisiana Raging Cajuns team. I think he's going to be the number one target for Lunch Winfield. And the offensive line is the X factor for me because I do think that the Raging Cajuns actually have the best offensive line in the entire Sun Belt. So I do think if you can, just kind of give them time and work in the backfield, I do think this offense is going to be much, much better. So the defense is still the problem. 2 returning starters, 31.3 points per game. I do think that's going to be a huge talking point for them this upcoming year, as long as they could continue to build that defensive side of the ball and get better and a little bit more disciplined on that side of the ball. I do think the Raging Cajuns are in for a bowl game yet again this upcoming season. Moving on to number 3, I have the Arkansas State Red Wolves, 7-6 last year under Butch Jones, and I think they go 7-5 again this season here. So Hunter Summers is the player for me that I think is going to stand out big time. Another great logo, by the way, one of my favorite logos. They started 1-4 last year, a little bit of a rough start. They won 6 of their final 8 games. The next step for them would be to start moving towards the Sun Belt Championship game. And I do think they come pretty close this year. But so another quarterback battle after Jalen Rayner has left. He is at Iowa State now. That is a huge loss for Arkansas State. But you had to figure, he's been a great quarterback in the Sun Belt for the last couple of years. It was only a matter of time before he did move on. But they brought in a ton of transfers as well. Like I said, Hunter Summers and Chauncey Cobb are back. And I think they are going to lead this offense with a quarterback battle here of Trey Owens, Ethan Crawford, Drew Dickey, and Jeremy St. Hilaire. So 4 guys vying for the starting spot for the Arkansas State Red Wolves again. But there are the skill position players in place to succeed rather quickly as well. The offensive line is a focal point for me, though. They struggled last year to open up holes in the run game, and they also gave up 30 sacks last year and gave up consistent pressure with Jalen Rayner under center. So I do think, that's certainly something that needs to improve going on this season. The defensive line is completely revamped for the Red Wolves. A little bit concerning as well, just the defense in general. A.G. McGee, Brandon Barnes, and the addition of Kennesaw State transfer 5 Hamilton should be the strength of the defense, but the defensive line play for the Arkansas State Red Wolves is going to be the biggest thing for me here this upcoming season. And I do think they get usurped by Louisiana Tech. I'm really excited for Sonny Cumbie's team. I think that Louisiana Tech, as I see here, I have here. God, I'm really struggling today. Uh, the X factor is the confidence, and I do think the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs played with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder last year, going into this year as well. They went 8-5 last year. It was a great year for Sonny Cumby, and I think that they come into the Sun Belt kind of saying, "Hey, listen, we might be big time players in this conference because this is a weaker conference than what we were playing in." They were in the Conference USA last year. Obviously, went 8-5. They moved over to the Sun Belt, and Sonny Cumby's team is explosive. They are strong, and I do think that they are going to be vying for that spot in the championship game, kind of, sort of, right away here. But and they had a bowl victory over Coastal Carolina, so there you go. That's another chip on their shoulder as well. 7 returning starters on the offensive side. Blake Baker missed time at the end of the year due to the torn ACL, but I do think that he's going to come back and be more than fine. Trey Kukic as well. So you have two, starting caliber quarterbacks that are ready to go and are healthy. So that's certainly a bump there. 25 takeaways for the defense last year, 22nd overall nationally in success rate. And they're bringing back 5 starters and getting back Colby Fields. So he had a great first 5 games of the season last year before he missed the rest of the year with a season-ending injury. I believe it was a back injury. But yeah, the defense is experienced. They are good. They are ferocious. They know how to take the ball away. Like I said, 25 turnovers last year. The offense is returning a lot of starters as well. I think this team is going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they do push for the Sun Belt Conference Championship game in their first year, but I do have them at 8-4. The beginning part of their schedule is a little bit difficult as well, so I do think maybe they lose a game or two along the way there, and then at the end of the day, 8-4, bowl eligibility, and a step away from being in the conference championship game. And then at number 1, I have the Troy Trojans. I think that this is Gerard Parker has done a really good job with the Troy Trojans. Last year, I was sleeping on them a little bit. They went 8-6 last year. And now I have them at 9-3. I just think that this team has 2 of the best players in the Sun Belt on either side of the ball. I think Donnie Smith, 13.5 tackles for a loss last year. The team only gave up, what was it? Oh, I had the number here. Sorry. 23.5 points per game last year, where Donnie Smith is clearly the best defensive player on this team. They had 37 sacks as well, wreaking havoc at the line of scrimmage. They did score 25.1 points per game. So I would like them to improve that just a little bit, a little too close in the points per game given up and the points per game scored. So I would like to close that or widen that gap just a little bit. But Goose Crowder is one of the better signal callers in the Sun Belt coming back as well. This team, just even though they had some personnel changes, I do think that the defensive players are in place and the offensive players are in place for this team to pick up right where they left off last year. And I think Goose Crowder is going to be, vying for the Sun Belt Player of the Year when it's all said and done. So the Troy Trojans being number 1 in the West Division means that our Sun Belt Conference Championship game for the 2026-27 season is going to be Old Dominion and Troy. And we have Old Dominion winning the Sun Belt Championship in 2026-27. I think the Monarchs are just too strong on the defensive side. I really do think they are relentless. They have a great secondary. They could turn the ball over, for the better. I do think this would be a bad matchup for Troy. Like I said, I think Goose Crowder is great. And I do think the offense certainly has playmakers. But at the end of the day, I still think that good defense trumps good offense. And I think it would be tight, but I think Old Dominion win their first Sun Belt Conference Championship in the 2026-27 season. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching today. I do hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one.